Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Sorry, it's slightly delayed. GoToWebinar had some issue connecting to audio for some reason, so apologies. That's what I've spent my past 10 minutes trying to do. Many thanks for joining. If this is your first webinar, just so you know who you're listening to, my name is David. I'm part of the software marketing team based out of Copenhagen in Denmark. Basically, we have 60 minutes today to run through on our subject. Hopefully you're aware today's subject is about the difference between catalog and session and when perhaps you should choose one over the other or decide on what you want to use. So basically we'll spend equal amount of time on each, and we run through like a simple scenario and, if you like, a more advanced scenario. It will be based on importing from a memory card. Of course, there's also the option if you're shooting tethered, what's best to use as well. But I'm actually going to run a webinar in a couple of weeks' time, which we'll talk about tethered as well. So I probably won't talk much about tethered today. It'll be more based on importing from a memory card, as I just said. You're very welcome and encouraged to ask questions throughout. The way you do that on your GoToWebinar control panel on your Mac or PC, you'll see a section at the bottom called questions. Put a question in there and that will come straight through to me. If you're on your iOS device or Android device, put a question, you'll see a question mark icon, tap that and that will come straight through to me as well. So let's get started. And I just need to switch screens to Capture One, which would help us immensely. And sorry, just need to arrange a few windows. Let's see. Okay, should be seeing Capture One now up on the main screen, and we get our questions panel up so we can see what's going on. The weather's very good, Tim, in Copenhagen. Thanks for asking. Has been spring, summer has finally arrived. If you want to find the cursor, then I try to highlight it as much as possible with the borders you can see around there. So that's how you can keep track of that. So catalogs and sessions. Before I show you the examples, you should consider a catalog or a session, obviously, as a way of managing your images, your files. They are two kind of very different ways of doing it. And as I said, I'll give you the brief rundown on each one, and then really you can decide for yourself how that fits into your workflow. There's no right or wrong answer, as in you should use this or you should use that. It's entirely up to you. So take what you learned today and then try to apply that in your own workflow. So let's start with a session. So whenever you want to make a new catalog or a new session, you simply say File, New Catalog, or New Session. So let's start with New Session. So when we say so, basically it opens up here and asks you to give a name to your session. Now, try to think of a session as, if you like, a project by project way of handling your images. And when I say that, what I mean is, let's say on Monday, you're going out and you're going to shoot landscapes, or you're going to shoot for a particular client or something like that. Everything is wrapped up in that session. And then on Tuesday, you're going to go out and do another totally different job. Then you would have a different session for that, and so on. So think of a session as applied to one single job only. A catalog can be somewhat different, and then we get to that later. But really, the purpose of a session is, if you like, a job by job basis. So we're going to make a new session. I've got some images on a memory card which are from the USA. So let's just call this USA. Can't remember when it was, but let's just say USA 2015 for the sake of that. Here is where the session is going to be. We have a look at exactly how a session looks in the Finder in a minute. Templating is something we get back to a bit later. Just ignore that right now. And what a session does is automatically create 4 folders: capture, selects, output, and trash. I would suggest leaving everything else here like this. So pretty much all you have to do is name your session and decide where you want to put it. So let's say OK, and then our new session will open up. Let's just make that bigger, and so far we have an empty session. Stephen says a session is a holistic, everything in one package approach to managing and processing images. Yes, so everything in one package. But as we work through, you'll hopefully see the purpose behind a session itself. So I really do think of them as a job by job basis. So if we look in the Finder in my pictures folder, what I just made, I made USA 2015. It has a capture folder, it has an output folder, it has a selects folder, and it has a trash folder, and it has this file called CoSessionDB, DB for database. So this basically tracks the images, certain adjustments they have, and so on and so forth. So that is a very simple session, and it's all wrapped up in this one single folder, which you can imagine is easy to transfer to external hard drives, send to someone else, and so on. So everything is bundled up in one single folder. So let's get some images into the session. Let's put in a memory card. I just noticed there was a bit of plastic hanging off the back of it, so hopefully this memory card is still operational. So memory card goes in, it will auto detect, and then our import images window pops up like so. This is much the same for catalogs, but slightly different, but we'll have a look at that in catalogs when we come to it. So import location no name. I'll just show you where this is. So you see I'm not cheating. So we have no name, we have a memory card, and it has a bunch of images on it like so, which you can see here. So displayed everything. So import from and import to. Now I say it makes sense to put in a session the images in the capture folder. Hopefully you'll agree with that. It doesn't make sense to put them in the selects folder or the trash folder, because as yet we haven't done any selecting or anything like that. So where do we want to import them to? Into the capture folder. I'm going to leave it at that. And then when we do this again with the session, I'll show you kind of some more advanced tricks that you can do. But so far, we're going straight into the capture folder. There's some other options here, which if you want to keep it simple, just basically ignore everything after import to. Later on, you can start to explore this. You can see you can enable a backup, which will copy raw files to a location of your choice. You can rename the images if you like. Currently, it's just image name, so it will use the file name here. We can add some basic metadata like copyright and description. We get to keywords a bit later. Adjustments, you can say auto adjust, which is actually quite handy as a good starting point, and include existing adjustments means if they've already come from a previous life in Capture One, for example, or if you're using a phase one back, then obviously if you've done star rating and a few other bits, then you can include that as well. Jan is saying, will I cover EIP? Yes, we can mention that briefly. But basically, if you want to keep it simple, importing from the card, importing to, in this case, the capture folder, and then all you have to say is import all. Oh, excuse me. I must have clicked the wrong thing. Capture folder, like so, import all, like so. So now we're importing all these images into my session, and you can see them popping in like so. There we go. So images popping into the session. I think I actually pressed import twice, which I recommend you don't do. So if we look in the capture folder, we can see the images popping in like so. So they're just going straight into the capture folder. Kim was asking, can backups be enabled after a session has been created? Not in this case, no. I mean, there's nothing to stop you taking the capture folder and just copying that somewhere. That's simple enough. So, but that's basically a backup on import. So if you imagine you're out in the field and you're shooting rapidly to cards and you want to have some kind of security, then that's when it makes sense to do a backup as such. So now we see our images popping into the capture folder. So now we have captures in our capture folder. Simple as that. So that's basically how to sort of get images into the session. Now we can think about the workflow as such. I'm not really going to look at any adjustment tools today as such. We're simply going to look at the workflow side of things. Gordon is asking, when you enable the backup, will it back up all the folders and the adjustments? No, it's just simply dumping the raw files in another location as a security measure. But as I said, if you wanted to just use some application like GoodSync or ChronoSync to watch the session and just constantly mirror it, then that's a good idea. So if you want to do that, then the applications I suggested, ChronoSync, GoodSync, are a good way to simply watch the root of the session folder and synchronize it as it comes through. So that's a good idea. Right. Yes, Charles, I will be covering albums too. Stephen was asking, can we start selecting and processing while importing images? Yes. So if you're importing 1,000 images as such, as that import process is going on, there's nothing to stop you going through images, looking at them, checking for focus and so on. It is like a background task. So yes, it's no problem at all. So again, if we think of our basic workflow, remember in the session we had the capture, the output, and the selects. So let's say you want to do some kind of culling or picking the best images from a session like so. So if you want to utilize the selects folder, you can simply do a couple of things. You can drag and drop to the selects folder, and the image is physically moved, as you can see. So you can drag and drop single images. So, okay, I like this image, I'm going to drag that across. I like this image here, I'm going to drag that across, and so on. If you're not a mouse person and you prefer shortcuts, then you can invoke a handy keyboard shortcut, which is Command J. Says he trying to find it. Here we go. By default, it's Command J, but I just changed the shortcut. Move all selected variants to the selects folder. I've got that set as B, for example. So if I press B now, oh, there we go. That image now is in the selects folder. So if we select any image and press B, by default, it's Command J, remember, but I just changed the shortcut to something else. So you can change it, anything that is relevant to you. So now that pops into the selects folder like so. So now we've got some images in selects. These are just simply shortcuts to the capture folder, the selects folder, the output, which is currently empty, and the trash folder. So just simple shortcuts. You can right click on these and say show in Finder, and that would just take you straight there. You can right click on it and say show in system folders. So that will show you in the systems folders area here, like so. So you can see the path of where they have capture, output, selects, and trash, like so. Just a couple of little handy shortcuts. So now if I go to my selects folder, at this point, I could start to think about, okay, I want to adjust and process and so on. If we wanted to do some basic keywording, for example, I could open up an image. We could go to our keywords tab. Oh, sorry, before we do that, if we want to sort of go further with our culling, if you wanted to move something to the trash folder, again, the same drag and drop applies, like so, or you can do a Command backspace. So you'll see here the short case, move to trash, Command backspace. I think on PC it's Control backspace, but you'll be able to see the shortcut there. So if we want to ditch this one, Command backspace, that goes to the trash folder. So now we have in the trash folder there. So if I say show in Finder, we can see capture, selects, trash. So that trash gives you a get out of free jail card. So if you accidentally trash something, then of course there's nothing to stop you dragging it back. You can do this actually in the Finder as well. So if I was to move this one to selects and we go to selects, see capture one updates. So this one here. So you can move stuff around in the Finder if you wish, but to be honest, it really does make more sense to do it in Capture One. The session will update if the session is open and you start to move stuff around in the Finder. So for example, if you somehow accidentally imported everything into the output folder, in the import window, you can just drag and drop it to the Capture folder and Capture One will figure it out. So as I said, if you did want to add some keywords, let's just open this guy up and then we can add some keywords in here like Las Vegas, comma separate if we wish. We can say Pontiac, that was the name of, in this case, we could say USA. Then we could say, I'm just thinking of generic keywords that would fit to the whole group of images as such. If I press enter, that then expands them out, but you see the keyword is only on this particular image. So to get all those keywords across, if I select all, then you'll see up here in the keywords tool, and any other tool in Capture One, there's a little up and down arrow. We can press that, then I can just say apply, and now keywords will be copied over to everything else. Then if I wanted to add additional keywords here, I could just type dog, for example. We could move on to the next image, and I could type sculpture, for example, and so on. So that's just basic simple keyword. Are keywords sensitive to upper and lowercase? No, that's just me being, what's the word? OCD in typing things with upper and lowercase, but no, we could say horse like so. So whether it's upper or lowercase, it doesn't make any difference. If I did a horse with an uppercase and a horse with a lowercase, it's the same. Just so you know, if we look in the library area again, you'll see here under the filters tool, there is a section called keywords. And now if I go to my selects folder, it shows me the number of various different options that then fit with that keyword. So one image in this particular folder, the selects folder, has a keyword called sculpture. If I click that, then it will go to that straight away. We can see that 11 have Las Vegas because it was generic, 1 has dog, and so on. If I wanted to add another keyword in another way, as opposed to typing, if I take this dog and drag and drop it here, you can see this count now goes up to 2, and that's added that keyword to that image as well. So you can drag and drop as well, which is actually a really handy option. So we could drag the boy down here, we could add him as sculpture, for example. So some basic keywording, or of course the same applies for metadata. If you wanted to add some metadata like creator, or we've already got copyright notice because that was in on the import window, but if you wanted to add any other metadata like website, www.phase1.com, then we could select all, and then we could click on here and say, see, website is checked, and say apply. Now every other image will have that website nomination in the metadata added like so. So next step would be obviously then to get some outputs. So if I have adjusted these images, for example, let's take an image and decide that we wanted to, well, I said I wouldn't adjust, but let's just say we wanted to add some clarity and some vignetting and so on. So we go through and adjust all these images, then we could do so. Gerd was asking, is it possible to create a template? Yes, you could just save a preset. Save your user preset. And then in the import window, if we go to the import window, we could then add your template preset here. So I'll show you that. So let's say this was the preset that you wanted to have. You could add in your email address like so here, for example. You could then save all your IPTC as a template, save user preset, save. We could say my IPTC template. And then when we go to import, we could simply add that preset. Oh, user, that's strange. Why didn't it pop up? Oh, my IPTC template, like so. And then that way it's going to pop up. It's going to apply that to every image on import. So that's really handy for metadata. Excuse me. Will it keep the metadata throughout to the output on your exports? Yes, Anthony, it will, if you make sure you haven't disabled that in the output process recipe, which we're going to have a look at right away. So if we go to the output tab, and you can see that we've got a number of various different process recipes. Now, if you haven't used process recipes before, now's the time to do so. Process recipe simply describes how your image is going to be processed out in its final entity, whether that's a JPEG, TIFF, and so on and so forth. There's a number of standard recipes that come with Capture One. As you click through them, if you look at the process recipe area here, you'll see it change. So this will give me a JPEG, 80% quality at 50% size. This gives me an 8-bit TIFF, 100% size, and so on and so forth. So there are some sample recipes. If you want to make your own, you just need to say plus. It'll give you, press plus too many times, it will give you an untitled recipe here. You can give that a name. So we could say we want to have a JPEG sized, say 1280 on the long edge, for example. Down here, we would choose JPEG. We would choose our quality, our ICC profile, any ICC profile you can pick there. We could choose our scale. So I want the long edge to be a certain number of pixels. I said 1280 and so on. Now there's additional tabs. Anthony, pay attention. You see there's a metadata tab here. So we can include rating and color tag, copyright, GPS coordinates, metadata, include all other. So if you make sure those are ticked, then all your metadata will carry to the output. If you uncheck those, then you're not going to get any metadata on your output. So you can just include those. You can add a watermark to the image, like your name or company logo, so text or image, like so. Under File, this is where our sort of file management goes. By default in a session, if you don't do anything in this area, you simply leave everything as default. All your images will go into the output folder, like so. So root folder, output location. If we look at the output location tool, it's also set to output. So by default, it will simply go straight to the output folder, like so. You can add a subname here if you want to, which will add whatever text to the front of the file name. And you can also add a subfolder if you want to. We're going to get into subfolders in a minute when we do session advanced on the next example. But I'm just going to leave everything as default so you can see what happens. You can have more than one recipe running at the same time. So if you wanted to have your JPEGs and your TIFFs at the same time as well, then you could too, but I just run one recipe. So let's select all and say process, like so. You can do Command D on the keyboard, which is a shortcut. You can see the processing bar along here. And if we click on the shortcut, like so, then you can see there's all my JPEGs in the output folder, all sized to 1280 pixels. So that is basically what a session does in the most basic sense. So we imported our captures to here, we put some selects in here, and we processed our outputs to here, and we had some images that we threw away in the trash here, or just one. This folder has everything you need in it to open that session on any other workstation running Capture One. So if I sent this to one of you, then you could simply open this in Capture One and you would see the session exactly as I would see it. So that is basic session structure. So you can stick with that and it need not be any more complicated than that. And then of course the next project you have or the next job, you make another session which will be under the same structure. Gerd is asking, can you export different recipes into different folders? Yes, you can. You can do it in a very simple way. So in the basic ways, in your recipe, we could create a subfolder called JPEG 1280, like so. And then on your high res, we could make a subfolder called TIFF 8-bit, like so. Let's enable that. So we've got TIFF 8-bit running and JPEG 1280. Let's just go to my output folder and delete all of those. And then let's run the process again, process. Oh, select all. It helps to give Capture One something to process and say process. Now if we go to output, you see we've got TIFF 8-bit folder, like so, and then we've got a JPEG 1280 folder. So that's basic session plus one, a little bit like that. For a lot of you, that will be absolutely fine running your sessions, but we can go one further than that. Welton is asking, what if you've got several sessions you need to search images? Does it search in all sessions or just the one you're working on? Just the one you're working on. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but you can import sessions into a catalog. But hold that thought. Let's leave that to the end. Just to finish off this basic session here, JPEG's in there, TIFF's in there, divided by whatever folder you wish. Process recipes, I said, by default, will go to the output location, but you can actually select anywhere that you want it to go. But the whole point of a session is that it's all wrapped up in this one container. So let's do it again and let's go a bit more advanced. So new session, let's call this USA Super Session because we're going to do some more clever stuff and say OK. As we're already up to 25 minutes, we might overrun slightly today, but let's do our best to keep in time. So same thing again, I've still got my memory card in there. I'm just going to close down our old session actually in that catalog. So we've got our one super session open. Let's say import again. You're going to see the same images from the memory card. And now instead of storing into the capture folder, let's make a subfolder. Now this is a new feature in Capture One 8.2 called dynamic locations using various tokens. Tokens have been in Capture One for a while, but now we can use a token to specify the location of an image on import and export. So these were shot over various different days. So it might help, and it's quite common that you want to split these up by date. So if I click on the button here, I want to make automated subfolder, which is, if we scroll down, image date, like so. Now there's a small arrow here where I can change the format. So I'm going to say, what should we do? We do day, month, year in numerical form. So that gives me 22nd of April, 2015. Okay. So now I'm going to get in the capture folder a separate subfolder based on the date of the image whenever it was captured. You see I've got my, who was asking, Gert, we might as well leave our IPTC template up if we wish. We don't need to have, oh, we could leave copyright in there. And let's say import all. Okay, now what does this message mean? When importing to subfolders, because we're importing to various different folders, it's not like the capture folder sort of exists now because there's now subfolders in the capture folder. So under albums, it will make us an untitled album, which basically contains all the images. But you'll see how this works in a second. Okay, so that's importing. Now let's have a look at our session in the Finder. So we've got our USA Super Session under Capture. We've got automatic subfolders based on the date that the image was created. Okay, now first challenge, if you want, is if we go to Capture folder, it looks empty because the Capture folder now has subfolders. If we go to Untitled Album, we can see everything, but we can't necessarily see it split up by those date folders, which is useful. So a couple of things you can do. If we right click here and say show in system folders, you'll be able to see the folders there. So there's our various different folders split by our various different date. If you want a faster way to access that without having to even go into system folders, what we can do in the Finder or Windows Explorer, take these folders and drag them into session favorites like so, and now I have a fast way that we can access all those various different folders like so. Now in terms of excuse me, culling or selecting, let's go up a gear and do something a bit smarter. So let's deal with it folder by folder. So there's a couple of different ways you can cull or rate. You can use star ratings, so we can add 0 to 5 stars by dragging with the mouse, or you could of course use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 0 to add star rating. We have color tags, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, pink, purple, and again we can use a shortcut for those. So if we go to where is it, adjustments, rating, you can see the shortcuts there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we go to color tag, you can see we've got red, yellow and green. I made a shortcut for none, which is Shift X, but you can make your own shortcuts, of course. So if any of you are used to Lightroom, for example, then you know there's things like reject and so on. But we can do a similar thing in Capture One. It's just not called reject, but basically you could think of using red as a color tag for reject. So let's do that. So if I say minus, that can reject an image. If I say plus, that's green, so that's a good one. If I say yellow, which is star, then that's kind of, I don't know. But there's all different ways you could apply this. That's just one way. You could use 1 star for reject. You could use 5 star for a good one. But if we think of the initial color of I really just want to keep the good ones and the sort of the get rid of the ones that were out of focus, I really don't like, and so on, then color tags is a good way to do this. Gordon was saying, would this work with tethered capture? Yes, I'm going to do a session tethered webinar in the coming weeks. I'll put it up on the events page soon, but yes, and there's kind of various different things you can do with tethered as well. It will get confusing to talk about tethered in this situation. Where was I? Okay, so culling. So for example, we could go through, we could say this is green. We could advance to the next image, for example, using the cursor keys, and we could say this is green. We could say this is red, for example. If you want to avoid advancing, then we can do something quite nice. So down here in the filters tool, we've got these radio buttons. So let's just say none. So that will show all my images which don't have a color tag. If I highlight the first one, then I can simply leave my hands on the keyboard, let go of the mouse or pen, and say green. That's good. It's just disappeared because I marked it green. This is green, this is red, this is green, this is green, this is red. This one is yellow, I'm not sure. This one is yellow, I'm not sure. I like this one, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one. So now I've done my culling. If we look down here at the radio buttons, you can see I did 3 that were red, I did 3 that were yellow, and I did 9 that were green, for example. So that's just a simple way of color tagging. We could go to the next folder. We could say, show me ones with no color tag, and then straight away I can say green, green, not sure, green, green, red, 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 green, red, red, green, 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 red, like so. Really fast to blast through. So I had 5 red and 5 green. Of course, if I decided actually I don't like this image, there's nothing now to stop me making it red as such. So now that's disappeared into that folder. Last time in this folder, we could then say color tag none, and then we can say yes, no, yes, yes, like so. So a simple way of color tagging like so. Now, if you want to filter at any point, so I'm on this folder, I can see all my color tagging, but if we just want to concentrate on the green, then we could do so like that. To clear a filter selection, hit the X like so. So Stephen's saying, so for most selection and processing purposes, sessions are all we need. I guess, but I mean, you can kind of go up a level again in catalogs, and we squeeze, we're finished sessions within the next 5 minutes, and then we go on to catalogs and get the same images in a catalog so you can see the difference. So what do I want to do now? Also, like if you wanted to see all your selects, all your greens, if you like, from all the folders, don't forget that we had our album that was created that shows us everything. Or you've got the basic albums, which is all images, 5 stars, and so on, like so. If you wanted to make new smart albums for various color tagging, it's a really fast way to do it. If we go to this one, 21, so that's 21 greens in the whole selection of images, and click on this button here with the 3 dots, we could say create smart album. It's got an active filter of green. We could say create smart album and call that green tags. Or if you wanted to just call it something more useful, you call it my selects green, like so, and say save. So now I've got a smart album there which shows all the selects of green, like so. So if we wanted one for the yellows, if we go back to all the images, we've got 4 that we weren't sure about, and then click on the dotted button here, say create smart album. We've got an active filter tag already of yellow, and then we could call this to be decided, and then yellow, for example, and say save. Now I've got all my images that are yellow. Now remember, this is a smart album, so it's dynamic. So if I think, well, actually, I really like this image, I'm going to call that now a green. It disappears, and it's now in this album, like so. So you can do a lot with color tagging alone. Now what I'd say is, once I was in my selects, now we can go through and say, well, this is a 4-star. I'm just using my cursor keys. This is a 3, this is a 5, this is a 4, this is a 5, 3, 5, 5, 3, and so on. We could do a similar thing in here. We could say, show me images that have no star rating, and then up the top here, same thing happens. 5, 5, 5, 4, 3, 3, 3, 2, 4, 5, 5, 4, 4. So how fast is that? So now within my selects folder, I've got my greens and star rated. So if we wanted to see green images, hold your option key down to add another, criteria. So option click. So now that shows me my green 5-star images. That's all your heroes, if you like. Okay, so that kind of gives you the idea of a bit more of an advanced culling process. I am recording this, by the way, so don't forget, don't worry if you've forgotten steps, like you can just rewatch the recording again. Now we can do really awesome stuff with outputting. I'm going to do it on the whole selection of images. So let's just go to Untitled Album, clear our filters, like so. So this is every single image. I'm going to say select all, or I'm going to try to do select all. Let's go to our processing tab, and let's have our TIFF and our JPEG again. And let's make a folder, a subfolder in the output location. So let's say we go here, and let's say instead of going straight into the output folder, we first want to do something called where is it? Session subpath, like so. So this is going to make us a folder, and it will split the outputs by date. So we'll be able to directly correlate our outputs to our imported ones. Then if we wanted to, if we put a /, this will then make us, or give us a possibility to then make a subfolder. So let's have it by color tag. So now we're going to have a subfolder based on the color tag. And then let's have a subfolder based on the rating. If we want to limit this, let's just go to general, where is it? Metadata basic rating, like so. So you're wondering what the heck it's going to look like, but you'll see in a minute. So remember, all I've done is go to all my images, selected every single one, picked a couple of recipes. Oh, I wanted to add one more thing. I wanted to have the recipe type. Let's go for general recipe name. Let's squeeze that in there and make sure I put my /. So I'm going to have the date. I'm going to have the type of image it is. And then the type of recipe it is. Then I'm going to have a subfolder split into color tags, and then finally into star rating. Are you with me? Good. You'll see it when it's finally output. So let's say OK. And then I'm going to say process. Let's go to our output folder. We can click here. So you see under output, we've started with a date. We can see our various different process recipes. You see the tags are coming in like so. So I can see all my green tags. Then I can see all the 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star. Oh, the reason why we've got JPEG 1280 is in there because I forgot to delete it from this section here. See, if we start using this more advanced method down here, you don't really need to add any subfolders in here. So if we go back again, so we've got our date, and then you're going to see another date folder pop up here in a minute once it's gone through all the various different images and so on, because we're basically processing all the images twice to JPEG and 8-bit TIFF, and we have folders from all the different dates too. Right, while that's whirring away, let's look at some question. Hartmut was asking what's the difference between a smart album and the filtered selection. Well, the filtered selection is only what you filtered there and then. The smart album is a way of keeping a record of that. And remember, a smart album is a dynamic. So of course, if I were to take an image and change its rating from green to red, then that would be reflected in the smart album as well, for example. Can you name an album instead of unknown or untitled? Yes, if you want to just change the name of the album, we could just simply click on it once and then just retype in a different name. The top menu with file, edit, etc. How do I turn that off? This one here, you can't, as far as I'm aware. In OS 10, you could go full screen. If you click here, then you'll just get full screen and you'll get rid of that menu as well. Anthony's saying when I go to the page, the token page, let's just go to processing again. I think, Anthony, you're talking about, this is you're seeing white on white. Unfortunately, in OS 10.10.3, the last update, Apple changed some of the things we use for creating graphics, and that had the net result that it became white on white. So basically, if you're on 10.10.2, don't update to 10.10.3 just yet. We are working on an update to fix it. So sorry about that. Let's just finish our super session with the output. So we've got a date for all those images. Each date has a subfolder which shows us our JPEG or TIFF. And then we have a subfolder showing us our star rating like so. And that's just all from selecting all and processing. Brilliant new feature. Oh, the top menu is hidden. I would like to have it back permanently. Well, maybe you must be on full screen, Casper, I guess. So if you're on full screen, just hit escape and it will come back. Jan was asking, any way of moving an image from an album directly to trash without having to go to all images also? Basically, if you just go to an album, you can drag it to the trash like so, or use the shortcut key. Right. Yes, I will keep you up to date when to update to 10.10.3. Basically, whenever the next version of Capture One comes out, that will have the fix for the white on white text. Okay, let's do a catalog before we run out of time. A lot of the steps are kind of the same in a catalog, so we don't have to worry about that too much. Let's close that session down and say File, New Catalog. Let's call this USA. No, let's call this David's Catalog, because the idea of a catalog is that all your work is in one place and can therefore be searched across all various different projects and things. So hopefully what you've learned from the session, it works very well for job by job. So session on Monday for apples, session on Tuesday for oranges, session on Wednesday for pears, and so on. So whereas a catalog is a way of keeping an overview of all your images, basically, that you've ever shot in your entire life. Or if you want, you can have a catalog per year. Some people do that. It's entirely up to you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I have one catalog which has all my images in going back to, I don't know, 2003 or something like that, but it's entirely up to you. So we need to get images into a catalog. Same process as before. Click on the import button in the top left hand corner. Where do we want to import from? Again, we're going from my SD memory card. So that's import from. Now import to, couple of different things here. Those of you who've been on Aperture, I'm sure some of you have, will like this option, which is inside catalog. Because what we created when we made David's catalog was this. So the Capture One catalog, which is essentially a database tracking the location of images and knowing certain things about them, like adjustments and metadata. If you wish, like you could do in Aperture, you can store images directly inside here and let Capture One do all the management of images by itself. That makes it very simple. The disadvantage being is you only have this much room, in my case 600 gigabytes, to store images, because obviously when this gets to 599 gigabytes, then you're using up all the space on your hard drive. But it's up to you. Again, there's no right or wrong reason. If this catalog file is sitting on a server with 20 terabytes of free space, then go for it. If in my case I have a laptop, then I don't like to store images inside the catalog because I like to store my images elsewhere, like on an external drive or something like that, which you can do. So import to, you have some options. Current location, this is a bad idea for a memory card. We don't want to leave images on the memory card. We want to put them somewhere safe. Inside catalog, we'll copy them inside the catalog itself, as I just mentioned, or we can choose a different location. So I'm going to choose a folder. Now let's put it, let's just put it in the pictures folder. Let's say make a new folder. I call this catalog images, like so. Now, how you organize this again is totally up to you. Now, I want to make a subfolder here because in a catalog you could have where are we? You could have 20,000 images all sitting loose in there, and you could organize it in the catalog using albums and things like that, which we'll look at. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Again, it's entirely up to you. What I prefer to do is have some very basic organization here and do some more advanced organization with albums and smart albums and so on. So I'll show you what I do. I have some basic information. So I basically want to have an event. So I'm just going to type USA vacation, for example. So that's going to make me a folder. And then I want a subfolder, and I'm going to do the same thing again. Forward slash, and then we're going to have date and time. So we're going to have image date, like so. And I'm going to have the format because I like day, month, year, for example. So that's going to give me some very basic organization. So what's going to happen is in my catalog images, I'm going to end up with a folder called USA Vacation and with some basic dates, just to help split it up. Again, we can do the rest that we did before, add a template, do a backup, and so on. But if you want to keep things simple, just pay attention to import from and import to. So let's say import all, like so. So now the images are popping in, like so. Let's have a look at some questions. Is it possible to change the file names individually in every catalog? If you wanted to, you can do rename. Just you can rename on export. You can change the naming convention. You can rename in the session or catalog itself by right-clicking on an image and renaming. So there's lots of different ways to do it. Is there a critical maximum size for the catalog? Not really. I guess if you went beyond 1 million, well, it depends on the system. It depends on the speed of your hard drive. It depends on your processor. It depends on your graphics card. It depends how much RAM you have. It's very difficult to say, do not go beyond a certain number. I have a catalog of 13,000 images. It opens in about 2 seconds. So I'm not anywhere near close to reaching any kind of performance limitation. That's with images stored on an external USB 3 drive, so it's not even a super duper fast system. I don't have any performance issues with that as such. If any of you are on Capture One 7, put your hands up if you are. Capture One 8 is significantly faster in handling catalogs, significantly. So if you're not on 7, then go for 8. Okay, so now we've imported images into our catalog. So you can see we've got USA Vacation, and then we've got 3 subfolders like so, organized by date. If you're coming from Lightroom, as some of you may have done, you may well prefer to do all your organization at system level. So if we go over here to the library tool and we expand out, this basically shows me where my actual images are. So we can see we've got these folders here split up by date. Let's just make these a bit bigger. So if you prefer to do all your organization here at system level, you can do so. Now, I don't think it's the most powerful way to do it, but I appreciate that's how you're used to it in Lightroom. So what I mean is that if you want to move images from folder to folder, you can simply just drag and drop like so, and now that image is moved here. I could move it over here and so on. If I want to make additional folders that the catalog is aware of, I can just say plus, make a new folder called say my selects, for example, and say add down here. This will add a new folder that the catalog is aware of, and then I could drag and drop stuff into there if I wanted to. So you can do basic organization down here. You can also synchronize. So if I right click and say show in Finder, let's just say delete a few images. Notice C might be hard to see, but you see there's a question mark in the bottom right. That now means Capture One doesn't know where these images are because I've dumped them in the trash. So what I can do is right click and say synchronize. And it says here, remove 3 missing images from the catalog. It will also do the same for subfolders, digging through subfolders like so. So now those images pop up. If I was to add an image into this folder, the same thing applies. I could right click and say synchronize like so. So you can do basic system level stuff here, dragging and dropping, making new folders, synchronizing, and so on. Now, I don't think that's the most superior way of organizing. It's the way Lightroom does it, but I think it's limiting because it's not dynamic. What you saw in the session with color tagging and star rating, you can do in the catalog, and you can even do it kind of with steroids on as well. So, for example, the way I organize is to use features in user collections. So let's just go to recent imports. Recent imports basically shows me everything that I imported on a last import as such. So basically I'm going to start by saying over here, let's make a new project. Now remember, this catalog could contain hundreds and hundreds of projects. If I can, I will open up a catalog with more projects in it. So let's call this USA vacation, for example. Now, if I try to, I can't drag images into a project. A project, see, looks like a cardboard box, like those kind of boxes that you store your files and folders and accounting and all that sort of stuff in it. So I'm going to open up this box by right-clicking and say New Inside Album, and I'm just going to say Images, like so. Now, what I'm going to do is select all from that last import and simply drag everything in there. Now, they're not moved from here. So if for some reason or whatever, my, heaven forbid, catalog file gets deleted or whatever, and I didn't have a backup because I'm very silly, then you've still got at least a basic organization of the project sort of name and so on. What's going on here is all virtual organization. So nothing is ever going to get moved around from here. It's all simply virtual organization. So now I've got all those images in that folder. Now, if I wanted to, of course, you might want to look at it by date, for example. Fastest way to do that within that project, if we look at the date, so you see we've got the ability to fix sort by date, even by day, like so. So if I wanted to, if we just had March, what I can do is just make a smart folder. See, active filter, day, month, year is on the 3rd, like so. So I could create a smart album and just call that, if I wanted to, excuse me, March, whatever. And then now that sort of automatically filters by date. I tend to basically just slap all the images into one place, and then we can do sort of further sorting as we did before. So for example, if we wanted to do the culling like we did before, what I could do is select images. Let's start with the first one, color tag. Let's say none with no color tag. Then we could go through and say, remember, plus is green. So plus is green, yes, yes, yes. Minus is red, yes, yes. Red, red, green, 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 red, green, green, and so on. So you get the idea. So now I've filtered all these images here basically by green. We had some reds and so on and so forth. Then once we get to green, we could then go through and say, show me those that have no star rating, sorry, green and no star rating, like so. Option click to get multiple choices. Then I could categorize further. That's a 5, that's a 5, that's a 4, that's a 4, that's a 3, 2, 5, 5, 4, 5, 4, 4. So super fast. And now under images, we've got all the various different rating. We can use in that project just simple smart albums again. So if I wanted to see everything that was green, we could simply then transform that, create smart album, say my selects green if you really want to know what the color is, and now I've got that smart album. Remember, the smart album is dynamic, so this is now set. So if I was to go into all images and for example make this one now green, plus now it's popped up in there. So I think this is a much more smarter way of organization, because if you do it physically on the folders, you're then always moving images around on disk. I might come back to this tomorrow and think, really? I picked that as a green? That's a terrible shot. I'm going to make that a red. Go away. Whereas if I had folders, I'm then dragging and dropping. I just think it's slower and less efficient as such. So within this project, you can have multiple number of albums and so on. What's really important is this smart album only relates to the images in this project, USA Vacation. If I just open up a bigger catalog, let's see, I have to open it off here, Capture One 8 catalog, like so. Let's just make this one bigger. So you see this is a more extensive use of these collections. So I've got various different projects, say photographers, that all contain images from various different photographers and so on. I've got features of Capture One split into different albums, sequences, for example, good for demoing that sort of stuff, different genres of images and so on. The whole point of organizing this way is that you can have the same images in different collections. So let's say we wanted to make a different project. Let's say make a new project and we call this My New Portfolio, for example. All your hero stuff. Then we could right click in here and say, let's say a smart album, and let's make a smart album which has all my 5-star images. And then I can just use a preset here which is 5 stars and say OK. Now whenever I bring an image into the catalog and make it 5 stars, it's, says he. Oh, I made a mistake. Hang on. Let's just get rid of that. What I wanted to show you is as I was saying earlier, the smart album that belongs in a project only sorts images or only looks for images in that project. If we have a smart album outside of a project, which is what I was trying to do, 5-star images, preset of 5 stars, say OK. Now we have a smart album that is always going to have your 5-star images in it. So let's say over the next period of 3 months, you've been on lots of vacations if you're really lucky. You've tagged images at some point with 4 or 5 stars and so on. You will always end up with a folder which is always watching for your 5-star images. So if we just go to vacation and I make this one a 5, straight away it pops into here like so. That's the whole point of a catalog, is that speedy way to organize and look for images. So if someone comes to you and says, well, I want to look at all your best images, easy. You could either go to all images and simply say 5 stars, or as we've done here, you could simply have a smart album. Oops, I moved it outside. You could simply have a smart album that is always watching your 5-star images. There's so much criteria for smart albums that you can do pretty cool stuff. Like if I make a new smart album, I could say I want to see all the rating. It equals 5. Ooh, 5, get it right. And then, for example, metadata like aperture is, or whatever, or camera lens. So camera, where is it? Camera lens equals, and so on. So you could even sort by your cameras, serial numbers, and so on. As I said, a fast way to make smart albums is simply use the radio buttons. So we could say I want to see all my 5-star images that was shot with a Sony FE55, which is all of them in this case, and that was shot fully open. So now I can see all the images on the 55mm that was shot fully open, for example. And remember, that could be across 12,000 images in your catalog. And it will happen instantly because all we have to do is search this, which is basically a database, a SQL database. So that's why it happens so fast. Again, if we go to my big catalog, let's look at all images. There's only 700, but you'll get the idea. So instantly we can say, show me all the 5-star images. There we go. There's all the 5-star images. Show me, let's just collapse date. Show me all those images, 5-star images that are of wildlife, for example. There we go. So depending on keywords, of course. And out of those 6 images, show me which was shot at f1, nothing, f1.4, f1.7, f1.8. Basically, we can keep going until we find something. Nothing in that criteria. So it's so fast to search through a catalog. Good question from Joe. Can I set capture images as root in the view? No, I know what you mean. Let's go back to my catalog here. Basically, in this view, you can see the whole hierarchy, or you can see basically the final destination hierarchy. I agree that's not as helpful as it could be. So we do understand that it would make sense if you could say make, for example, catalog images the root folder and then see from there. So consider that a feature request. A couple of other things on catalog based on your questions. Is it possible to collect different catalogs into a new one? Yes, there's nothing to stop you saying file, import catalog, and you can introduce one Capture One catalog in another. That's quite good if you have like a master catalog at home and you go out on the road and you create like your vacation catalog and you want to import that into the master catalog. Yes, you can do so. You can export catalogs. So let's say you have all my selects here and you wanted to export this as a catalog and give it to someone for retouching or printing or whatever. You can say file, no, sorry, my mistake, right click and say export as catalog. So that will export out as catalog. Let's say exported catalog. What is nice, you can say include originals. So that will physically put the originals inside the catalog as well. Can you divide a catalog into 2? Thomas was asking. No. Oh, well, I guess you could export the images you wanted in catalog number 1 and then export the other images in catalog number 2, but there's no way you can sort of say split catalog. Caroline's trying to wrap her mind around the fundamental difference between sessions and catalog. It's very simple. Think of a session as a job by job thing, as a way to organize your images. So a session, as I said, you open or you create a new session for every project that you do. And within that session, you have your raw files, you have selected ones by whatever means, and you have your outputs. In a catalog, that is an overview of your entire photographic life, if you wish. You can use the containers here, project, albums, and smart albums, to organize all those images in a sensible way. So as I showed you in my demo catalog for Capture One, that export's done, I've organized my catalog, which is basically just one huge folder of images. I'll show you. So Capture One 8 catalog, every single image here, I've just basically got a bunch of images here. The only way they are organized is in the user collections area. That's it. There's no organization at Finder level. So sessions, one session per job. Catalog, your entire photographic world can be organized into one catalog. The advantage of that is the ability to search and find images and have one place to store and reference everything. So if you want to use both, you can. I use both. Basically, what I do is when I've gone out for the day and done some photography, I create a session, I mess around in the session, I make exports, I throw things up on Instagram, I put stuff on Facebook and so on. When I'm done with that, I import it into a catalog. So just don't get too scared, but you can import a session into a catalog. Why is that useful? Let's say over the course of 3 months, you've ended up with 60 sessions And as Sando, I think, was asking, no, Welton was asking, what about if I want to search all my sessions? Then what I do is I have a catalog which basically archives all my sessions. So you get the best of both worlds. But if you want to keep it simple, just pick one. Just pick one and go with that. Can you export as a session? No, you can't. You can say just export as a catalog. So if I say open, there's that exported catalog, for example. So there's that exported catalog with those images. So you could send that to someone, they could make adjustments, they could send it back to you, and so on and so forth. Welton was asking what happens when you rename the files that are not in the catalog but in another folder. You get a warning. So if I want to select all and say right click, say batch rename, you get a warning. Renaming referenced images will change their file name on disk. Are you sure? You get a warning because what if these images appear in some other database like, I don't know, Media Pro or heaven forbid Lightroom, then of course it's going to change the name. That might break the connection elsewhere, but I can perfectly rename as well. So we could rename that to whatever we want. But yes, you do get a warning. Patrick, I just answered your question. So yes, you could import a session into a catalog. Kim, yes, we just discussed that. So it is two different ways of working. Yes, Caroline. So it does make sense to choose one or not the other. I said I kind of do a hybrid of both, but get comfortable with one or the other first, and then think about your accelerated workflow. When you import a session into a catalog, just to clear that up, well, let's do it. Let's just make a new catalog. And let's call that session archive, like so. And let's say import session. Let's get my USA super session. To import it, I just tag the cosession.db and say import, like so. Now, images are not moved. They stay exactly where they are. And basically what happens is, by default, you see it creates a project for that session, shows me the session folders, shows me the album, shows me my favorites. So now I can go through and look at all those various different things in the session. But images are not moved. They will stay exactly where they are, just to be aware of that. My advice is just practice, make a few dummy sessions, mess around with them, import them into catalogs, see what you can and can't understand. If there's anything you're struggling with, just make a support case and ask us. Just go to phase1.com. I'm aware we've overrun a bit, sorry. Go to support and say contact support and just ask us. We're here to help. So you're all entitled to free support, so use us. Gordon's asking about my Instagram recipe. That's amazing how much interest that gets. Basically, the Instagram recipe, let's just grab this image. It resizes to 612 pixels because apparently that's the best resolution for Instagram. So if we turn this on, all I do in the crop tool is I say 1:1. So that way I get square. And then when I draw my square crop, like so, you'll see, watch the tags top and bottom, 612. Then I can resize as I wish. And then what happens is, for Instagram, I process out to my Dropbox. And then if I process to my Dropbox, I can then pick it up on my phone and then I can publish to Instagram. So that's just a relatively easy way of outputting. After importing a session into a catalog, can I delete the session? No, not really. Remember, Gerd, because it doesn't move the images. So don't delete it. But what you could do, you're getting into advanced territory here. So basically, you see that, let's just close filters down. It's basically showing me where all my images are, basically in these various folders. So what I can do is then move images to another location. But to be honest, I would simply keep everything as it was, basically. So that would make more sense. Okay, I'm afraid we're nearly at So I was just looking at Timo's question. Are changes of a catalog synchronized to Media Pro? No, remember Media Pro is a cataloging application in itself, so they are not synchronized. The benefit of using Media Pro over Capture One is really only if you want to catalog things other than images like PDFs and so on and so forth. If you only want to catalog images, you may as well use Capture One because then it's everything in one application. So unfortunately, let's have to wrap up for the moment. While you're here as my captive audience, before you disappear, I just want to show you the next webinar, which is next week. So hopefully that should be popping up on screen now. That's just basically an open Q&A. So it's your webinar. So you can ask me anything you like. The reason why I'm doing this is because I had a webinar with a guest a while back who unfortunately had to cancel. So we just threw it open for Q&A and it was really popular. So just come along and ask whatever you want. If you want to, you can email me first with your question so I can be somewhat prepared, or I'll just have to wing it. So you can email webinar@phase1.com. webinar@phase1.com with a question, and we can do so. I'll put the sign up link in the follow-up email so you can have an easy way to register. But please register. It's actually quite fun because the main benefit is that you will learn something that you probably weren't aware of because you wouldn't think to ask that question. So maybe it's not the question that you ask is going to be the most enlightening. It's the one that someone else is going to ask. So it's a good community webinar. So please sign up and show up. So sorry for the 10-minute overrun. I hope it was useful, and I hope to see you all next week and in the future again. You'll get a follow-up email in 24 hours time, as I said, with that link for sign up. It also has the link to the recording. So if you do want to watch it again, look out for that email and you'll be able to watch this webinar and all previous webinars as well. Okay, see you all again soon. Thanks for your time. Take care.